Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast, coming to you live from the motherboard. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone. It's been a little while. We had as Justin alluded to, an off week due to some technical issues. We had briefly mentioned them in the 100th episode, the live pod that we did, but didn't really get into it. So Justin's motherboard is still being replaced, unfortunately, but we're making it happen tonight.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't spend too much time last episode on it, because it just would have been a 2-hour complaining session with like a smidgen of F1 right at the end. But yeah, we are back in action. Good to see you, my friend. How have you been? How's your week? How's life treating you? I know we had a race in the off time here.
Yeah, it's been good. I've had a nice couple of weeks. I've been riding a sports high a little bit. So the weekend of the last F1 race, Monza, of course, we'll get into it later, but Max pulled out the win in that. Penn State also had a nice win that weekend. The Eagles also had a nice win that weekend. And then over this past weekend, another Penn State win, another Eagles win. So my teams have been thriving. I'm just living it up. But how's your past couple weeks been?
Yeah, I gotta say, things are going pretty well considering, no laptop, and it's just interesting. You realize just how much time and things like had gravitated around it. I'm finding myself with like an interesting amount of free time. So that has been just a different element to the previous weeks. But yeah, let's get into the show here, Aaron. Let's give me your rose, thorn, and seed.
Sounds good. So my rose is just this past weekend. Actually, it was just in general a pretty nice weekend, getting to spend a lot of time with Colleen's friends and family a bit. So we on Saturday went to a barbecue that one of her friends were having. I got to see her interact with a bunch of people that I had never met, that she knew from previous work and whatnot. So it was just kind of like cool, kind of being on the outside, seeing all these people interacting with her and everything, and how the different groups it was like interesting watching the groups of a different social group, like, and how they kind of mesh and have their own little individual cliques and things like that of people that they would hang out with within the party. Mm-hmm. So being like one of the few people who really didn't know hardly anyone there. I knew the guy who was throwing the barbecue, his roommates, and Colleen, and that was and maybe a couple other people, but I was like just getting to watch, which was cool. And then the next day we went to Six Flags for their opening weekend of Fright Fest with Colleen's brother, sister-in-law, and sister-in-law's brother. So we had a cool time, rode a ton of roller coasters and rides, and then did some spooky stuff. So that was fun.
Now, do you guys wear costumes to this event?
We do not, but it's something that they've done for the past, I guess it's 3 years in a row now. So It's a cool time. We saw some people dressed up. There was a guy dressed like one of the Akatsuki from Naruto. There were people dressed up as like jesters and other like weird kind of costumes and everything. But it was in general, like Sunday at the amusement park, it might have been my best like amusement park day I've ever had. We were through like 4 rides in the first hour of being there. There was no wait time for any lines. I think our
Nice.
longest wait time was about 10 minutes, which was for one of the haunted attractions, like at the end of our day at the park.
Mm-hmm.
So just a pretty cool time. It's been a while since I've been to Six Flags. I don't think it's been since high school. So it was a fun trip and fun weekend. So that overall just was my rose, was a very fun weekend. My thorn for this week is I have eczema, and it like bothers me a lot. I get it in like the creases of the back of my knee and like sometimes my armpits and like just weird places that are like uncomfortable. And it seems to be a seasonal thing as weather changes and whatnot. Some parts of it spring up, but my one finger gets it real bad and gets just like super dry and cracked and like hurts, and there's not an easy way to avoid having that happen. I use any type of like eczema shit, and so it's just been
Wait, so you're just like lubing up one finger?
no, I mean, I use like hand lotions that are supposed to be for that, but like sometimes I'll have to like I have a prescription like cream that's like stronger than the shit you can get at the store. And so I'll like put it on certain parts of my knuckles that are really bad and put band-aids around them and things to just let it not get washed off. And just like in general, inconvenient, not comfortable, and I haven't found a good solution to it. So it's been my frustration for a bit, but recently it's just gotten a bit worse. And so that's my gripe. But it fortunately does not stop me from doing anything I want to do. It's just uncomfortable and annoying and hurts. So, and then my seed for this week, I am just very excited that Survivor is back. This is going to be Colleen and my, like, last season when we were watching, I would always have to watch the episodes like a day late because we wanted to watch together and we weren't living together and had the podcast on Wednesdays. So I would push Survivor watching till Thursday and always would be behind. So now, well, I mean, not a big inconvenience. I didn't mind, but it's cool because now we'll get to like do the podcast, and then when we wrap, we'll get everything going and uploading, and I get to watch some Survivor before I go to bed. So that'll be cool. I'm looking forward to it. It's one of my favorite shows, so I am pretty excited for it. But
That's an interesting seed in the sense of like just looking forward to the time spent, where previously it was like you spread it out a little bit, but now it's
I just get to keep up with everything. I like, it's annoying to have to avoid spoilers, and so if I don't have to, then like that's a nice plus. So yeah, it's just the seed of it being back and kind of my excitement for getting to watch a new full season and everything. Each season I have wanted to go on Survivor for a long time, and so I've wanted to put together a video and all to apply, and I just haven't done it. Also, this is going to be really weird for anyone who's watching on YouTube, but I just realized that my camera is backwards from what it usually is. So I need to figure out how to flip it. But while I'm doing that, I'll let you get into your rose, thorn, and seed.
Well, I do appreciate that there, sir. Seeing you in mirror form would not be too bad. I'm interested to see what the twist for the new Survivor season is going to be. I know with the with the evolving metagame of Survivor, people like were going out and just like searching for these idols and like really trying to like game what they knew was going on. So I'm interested to see what they come up with as a twist for this season. I think that's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to keep you updated on how it is. I'm sure I'll fill you in on whether it is a good or bad season. So,
Sure.
um,
Well, it makes me think of the Little Dicky song where he's saying he's like, "Yeah, I gotta like watch this live. People are gonna like tweet about it and shit." Where like he can't miss it.
that's kind of that's a pretty good comparison.
Well, I mean
Um,
that's like what you're describing. Like, you literally don't
yeah,
want it to be ruined. Yeah. So
yeah.
that's pretty funny.
Well, I've accidentally done that with other shows recently because the new Game of Thrones and all is coming out, and that's a big one on Twitter. So I'm
Yeah.
just like dodging any tweets that look like they have a funky name in them because that is most likely some Game of Thrones character. So
Gotcha. The House of Targamas.
yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah, what has your rose, thorn, and seed been the past couple weeks? I can imagine your thorn, but but what else has been going on?
To be fair, I think you're not gonna expect my thorn, but I will say I've been cheesed, sir.
You've been
I've been cheesed
okay.
and discriminated against. My
Okay.
taste buds are not welcome here in this country.
Wait, why are you? Wait, are you alert or one of the people who doesn't have the taste buds to like taste cilantro and it tastes like soap to you or something?
No, no, like literally cheese. We went
Oh,
to Five Guys, order a bacon burger. They slap a pound of cheese on it while I didn't order it. It doesn't sit well in my stomach, and but I have to say, instead of just like kind of losing my shit, I was like, all right, well that's unfortunate, but these people are whatever fucking hooligans, so who cares?
well, I mean, okay, so this is my opinion from someone who is a decent amount of experience in customer service facing industries.
Yeah,
It is okay to ask for something to be fixed if it is like wrong.
bro, I was
It's
like all the
no,
way
it.
home.
Okay, that's different. I was gonna
That's
say
like
because I
I'm not doing that. I'm not going
no
all
no
the way
no
back out.
that's different. I was thinking you like were sitting down there to eat because
Oh no, I for sure would have taken it back up.
I feel like so many people in our age range are like concerned about like offending customer service employees, and it's like it's not about asking for something to be fixed, it's about how people ask. Because I've run into a number of times, like when I worked in the hotels, like two people could ask me the same exact thing different ways. One would get a yes, the other person would get a no. Someone comes in, slaps down a piece of paper on my desk that says, I found a better price online than what you have listed. I want you to price match this and shit like that. I would have people do that. Like they'd print out like the picture of Priceline or whatever and like slap it down, and I'd be like, that's not how that works. And then other people being like, oh, I saw it like cheaper online. Like, do you mind? I'd be like, sure, all good.
Right.
So, so I thought you were more concerned about the actual act of asking, and you're just like, I'll just deal with it,
Oh
as
no, not
opposed
at all.
to
I
just
would. I
the
would.
annoyance of it not being the way you ordered it.
Yeah, and then it being 25 minutes down the road on top of it.
Yeah.
So it's whatever. But it was just it's just the frustration. It happens often where that's just like the one easy oversight that I've seen a lot of places make is because I imagine so many orders do have cheese on them. It's just like it just falls by the wayside. So whatever. I just had a turkey sandwich with a bunch of fixings on it for dinner. Was not a problem. I just thought that was just a funny thorn. My rose here for the week, I have to say, for all you dog lovers out there, just feeling really grateful for Sasha today. Obviously, like, she's still around. We're kind of in that late stage of life where, things could change quickly. And I think it's just good to take time, take pause, and say, like, man, I'm just happy you're here and appreciate the time and just being grateful for her because she's the best. So that's my rose here for today. And then my seed over the weekend, me and Sarah, we got her Christmas gift in the mail. She's been wanting to kind of have better access to her desk, and the chair that she had was like not comfortable, not cutting it, not working for her. So we invested in a similar chair that she got me last year. So
I
that
see it
came in
there
over
in
the
the background.
weekend. Yeah, she has the nice mint color.
It looks good.
So we put that together, organized a little bit of her desk, hung up some of the paintings that she had stowed here, and really just kind of opened up that area of the room for her. And it's just very refreshing, kind of cathartic to clean, throw shit out. I love getting rid of something. It's like my favorite thing to do. So yeah, it was a pretty good weekend, pretty good seed because obviously, like when things are organized, you can start things with a clean slate, and
Yeah.
it's just nice. So
Well, and being
pretty
comfortable too, like her new chair and everything. That's a solid positive as well. So
Oh, it's huge. Like I've come out, I think 4 days running. She tends to wake up before me, but I'll come out in the morning and she's just been in here like journaling on the computer with a coffee, like looking pretty cozy and really just
nice.
enjoying the space. So that's like just immediate bonus right there. So just all good stuff here. But I know we've got a lot to get into here for the meat of the show. Now, you wanted to talk some video game stuff, and I am super keen on it. What do you got for me here?
Well, just a couple of like kind of quicker notes, but the first thing, so in the uh, I don't know, not in the news, but something that's like come up as a pretty big topic of discussion regarding Twitch has been gambling on Twitch. And so
Hmm.
apparently, and I didn't look a ton into it, but I guess there were people who were gambling on stream, playing different slot games and other things that are pretty easy to tempt people into to falling into that trap. And so
Yeah.
Twitch recently banned that or banned a number of sites and specific types of gambling. They're like sports betting, fantasy football, things like that are okay. But this other side with playing craps and slot machines and things like that, they're like, nah, that's too impressionable. But then on the other side, I saw people who are like, then kind of advocating, oh, like you think that this is not okay to put up there for impressionable like children and whatnot to see, but you've got these hot tub streams up there and everything
Right.
that are like negatively or could negatively affect these impressionable children and whatnot as well. And it was funny because I came across a tweet from none other. We've talked about her before, but Casey Tron, a name that I did not know was still in the gaming space.
That's my girl, dude.
And she had
I'm
tweeted
alting. I'm alting.
that streamers gambling has caused more damage for impressionable young viewers than what sitting in inflatable hot tubs ever will. But the echo chamber on Twitch ain't ready for that conversation. And I think that both are like just not great to have on there personally. But I also find it odd that like they don't like fully restrict either. Like if one goes, I would imagine that hey, if you're gonna slap a you must be older than 18 little like blocker thing on a certain category of Twitch before you go to it and start watching, like hey, maybe that's the way to do it. But it's just it's an interesting topic. I was curious what you would think about the different sides of that. Because I think that there's reason for both to be fully banned. I think there's reason for both to potentially be left on with some sort of disclaimer that it is not for impressionable audiences. I'm not really sure the best course of action, but
It feels like an issue that is that like may fall under the heading of like parental controls in the sense of, and it would be near impossible, so that that line of thinking is almost like kind of moot. It'd be so easy for a youngster to just create a new Twitch account. Like if he's already on that device, they have to be so aware of what's going on that I'm not sure how good parental controls are really, so I don't want to like put all my faith in that, but it feels a little bit like a combination between, if those things are on Twitch, where it's just going to be this wholesale streaming service where any niche thing that you want to watch somebody do, we've got it. If Twitch wants to be that, the route's got to be the disclaimer and really not hide those pages, but make it a little harder to get to, in the sense that the hot tub beaches and whatever the like whatever choice, it's right there next to first person shooter games and arcade games, like right next to the just chatting and IRL. Like it feels like the homepage would want to be reorganized, and then like you said, have a disclaimer slapped on. And then is there a world where streamers are incentivized to remind viewers to watch responsibly, in the sense that alcohol commercials, they say please drink responsibly,
and
right?
in
They've taken
most
that upon
like
themselves.
in most streams that people are drinking, or YouTube videos where I see people drink similar things, where the content creator will be like drink responsibly, or like
Sure.
things like that. So
Like what does that sound like to you? Like a disclaimer, reorganize the homepage where it's a
well,
little more hidden, a little more
the
like that's like adult content,
the
right?
fact that that is not already like on its own like section separated on the
Right.
homepage, I think anything like that um, should be kind of pushed to its own little category and section. Like if, because I get it, Twitch is a extremely broad streaming platform for a very broad audience. They're streaming to children, they're streaming to plenty of adults, they're streaming to everywhere in between, in all sorts of different games or content. And I just imagine that the best solution, for one, is to, when someone creates their Twitch account, you have to verify your birthday. Like, why not only populate those, or only give access to those specific sections of streaming to people who are over 18 or over whatever age is required? Gambling, I guess, would be 21. Or I don't know. I just think that there is some way to do that without necessarily banning things, because it's not like Twitch as a company took a stand against any of these things.
Right.
All of their responses to any of these streaming categories and things are due to outcry from users, parents, and content creators. And so if like a number of big content creators, including Pokimane, all came out at the same time, basically, intentionally, like they planned to all put out tweets and things like that, kind of calling Twitch out on this at the same time. And so there would be a lot of conversation and attention to it. And so if you're responding just because of pressure, it's clearly not something that is your company's like prerogative. So if it's not, then like you should just do a better job in general of isolating it so that you can avoid that negative, like just as an intelligent business, you want to avoid negative backlash. So why just allow things that could easily be solved by moving where something pops up on your when you're looking through the categories or whatnot?
Right.
Like that's an easy thing that would have made those things less accessible. I don't know.
And also not just totally caving to the streamers. Like when you said that all these other streamers are coming out and saying like we don't want this, in a sense that feels very. I doubt they're doing it for the community and the young eyes that are potentially watching. They want the least amount of addictive channels so people have a higher chance of watching them, especially someone like Pokimane. Like their livelihood is made on here as much as some of these other streamers who these streamers that would be taking a stand, quote unquote, would be actively attempting to take the livelihood away from other individuals just because what they do is considered like adult or lewd or whatever. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I do believe there should be a discourse between the community and find out what the right what the right position on the slider bar is for how much access you have to this stuff. But overall, I don't think you should be trying to take the livelihood away from anybody just because you don't like agree with it from maybe like a moral standpoint or whatever. Like,
Exactly.
so what, Pokemon? Like, if you don't agree with gambling, that's fine. But don't try and take away these people's livelihood. Let's just try and have a conversation of like, is there a way where it's just put under like the casino section, or even even make the name like so addictive for like the channel header, like Las Vegas and adult room or something like that. Like whatever, if a 12-year-old still clicks on it, then fine. But at least Twitch and these other streaming services would have done their part to say, all right, fine, at least it's not all over the homepage and the first thing that you see is fucking Amaranth in a bikini.
Yeah, I think that there's better solutions than just like outright banning things, and
especially bans put forward from other members of the community that it is in their interest to have less viewers on other channels.
And whether it's could be a moral sense that they feel, which I just think that's fine if you do feel that more morally and everything, but the forcing your opinions on morality on other people is just something that I am not a big fan of. And so I think that there's solutions, but I just find it odd that seeing like Twitch kind of bend to it. And I was curious what your thoughts were on just generally like the topic and what could or couldn't be done or should or shouldn't be. So I think it's an interesting topic. I'm sure we'll see more in the future. I don't know if we'll touch on it again, but definitely an interesting thing going on in the video gaming and streaming world.
Yeah, and because it seems like it's an industry that's still kind of in its infancy, where we as viewers are learning what we expect from the services that we use, and the services are learning what the viewers expect of them, and like vice versa. I don't know if I just said all that right, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's obviously still evolving, and especially with like big money involved, like Riot must just be having a world tour of a year. You know, they've got the world championships, the Valorant championships just popped off. Like that was such an insane tournament. I think we'll get into that a little bit later as well. But
Oh
like,
yeah.
it's not just these like small name whatever. You know, like it is in the best interest of these very large companies for something like Twitch and YouTube streaming to still exist. So like, yeah, it's all like just very, very muddy water in a continually evolving industry, I think is what I'm getting at, where like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be a little while before we land on any like kind of consistency with this stuff.
I think it'll always continue to evolve and change. I think more so than a lot of things in just the normal world, because technology and the digital world does seem to have a faster cycle in terms of changes and everything than
Yeah.
something like bureaucracy and changing laws or like anything like that. It's a private company who, in most cases, who are doing things, and then other companies changing to keep up with the competition. So it's definitely a faster paced thing, and I'm sure we'll see in the future more discussions about all sorts of different things, that changes that people are pushing for, not pushing for, and whatnot. But this is an interesting story in terms of their response, in particular, to kind of this outcry from a couple of really big presences on the platform.
Sure.
So,
Well, and overall, like it's been frowned upon, in a bunch of different ways. There's like the loot crates, and remember the whole thing with like the Paul brothers on their
oh
stream and
yeah,
like Rice Gum and all that. So it's like it's been a thing here for a while, but yeah, it seems like the overall view is kind of keep it off of this shit.
yeah. I mean,
Which
but
fair enough, man.
hey, if that's what they're gonna do, that it is what it is. But I still,
Right.
uh, it seems silly not to like focus on that and ignore other aspects of like
Hmm.
similar moral dilemmas. So,
Hmm.
but the other just video game note, so the Grand Prix map that was coming out for Modern Warfare 2 apparently mentions and notes about it and whatnot have all kind of disappeared from social media. So I don't know if that means maybe they are revamping some things and it'll be released as like a update later on, or if it's gone. I will be a little sad if it's gone, because I was just kind of intrigued by the idea of like wandering around it and like seeing just what it looks like, the different cars, making fun of it a little bit. But I was just a little bummed. I'm hoping that it'll still come out, but it was just something that I had seen that apparently any social media tweets, things like that were put out regarding it, have all kind of been pulled back. So,
Well, how much can you really tweet about like an upcoming map until it,
well,
is
no, I
just
mean
out?
it's like they like deleted tweets and things like that about
Oh,
announcing it. So,
oh, gotcha. That's very different.
yeah, so it's like I don't know if it'll be a thing anymore,
Hmm.
unfortunately. But
Hmm.
either way. But we do have some F1 to get into. We had a race a couple weeks ago. We had Alex Albon being out from the race, having appendicitis, getting his appendix removed. He ended up being in the ICU for a bit, but it seems like he is, from everything I've seen, has been able to recover pretty well. And I don't know if he'll be back for the upcoming race, but I would imagine he'll most likely be back this coming race or the following. So,
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine Nick DeVries may hope that, he just says, hey, take your time, recover it. I'll keep your seat warm here in this, in this Williams here. Don't worry about it.
yeah, and talking about Nick DeVries, but before talking about him, we had a new F2 champion who was crowned just a couple weeks ago. We had Felipe Dragovic, who was crowned as the new F2 champion. And so quickly thereafter, he did get scooped up by Aston Martin into their driver development program. I believe he is the first person in their program. So it's cool to see other teams trying to bring in the young talent and kind of develop that, like we've seen with the Mercedes junior drivers, Red Bull, and some of the other teams. I think it's great to see Aston Martin looking to bring in a younger driver who could potentially grow into a really good talent in F1 down the road. Since I doubt he'll get the opportunity immediately. But I thought that was a pretty cool thing to see happen very quickly after his F2 world title.
Yeah, and now is there a salary or like a bonus? Like, are you like part of the squad when you're in the driver development program, or is that just kind of a thing that you're associated with and you kind of train and do whatever? But like, do you actually pay them to be a part of it? What's
No,
the arrangement?
so it would be someone that they sign basically as a driver to some extent. So I think in most cases they would be considered a reserve or development driver if they're not. So there's of course junior drivers that are driving in F3, F2 championships. We see people from Red Bull junior team and whatnot down in those different championships as well. I think this is more so, hey, we're bringing you into our organization, similarly to what Nick DeVries was doing with Alpine, having him be a test driver on the simulator, having him be a reserve driver. And so I think it would be similar to that, to kind of gear someone up, see if they have the potential to race actually for the team in the future, but also just like grow their understanding of how the team works, driving in F1 in general, whether it be sims or potentially like free practice sessions, things like that. So I think it is more so signing them as a driver on a lower salary, but providing them with opportunities to grow and learn and also benefit the team with their talent and kind of knowledge or experience that they're bringing from whatever racing series they're coming in from.
Gotcha. Very cool. That was a really solid breakdown. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm happy to get into it. I think it's a really cool system, and I love seeing more teams kind of start that, especially after Alpine was kind of in a position where they were wondering whether or not to continue their own development program after, from their side, putting so much money into Nick DeVries or into Oscar Piastri, and then seeing him jump over to McLaren.
Yeah.
That's one of those things that could cause a team to say, hey, is this money worth it if this is what's going to happen? So it's nice to see another team dipping their toes in and looking to kind of home grow a little bit some talent, bring someone up through, show them the ropes, and potentially give them that opportunity down the road. So
Yeah, I thought the scenario with Oscar Piastri was just quite unfortunate. It sounds like, yeah, who knows what was promised or kind of what went on, but that is going to be quite unfortunate and set a bad precedent moving forward. It made me think of it made me think of the LCS right away, where one big part of the conversation year in and year out during the off season is the no poaching rule. Is you can't have talks behind people's back. They've got to be, you're not trying to just steal players. And that's been kind of set in from like the foundation, kind of from the groundwork and I don't know how much it actually helps it not happen or whatever, but you just think that should there be some step in from these teams to say like, look, we've got to shore up our contract writing or understand that if we don't have protection on the outside, we've got to do something from the inside that guarantees these individuals to like want to stay with them. So I'm curious, maybe there was like bad blood, maybe something happened to like make him want to walk away.
I think that from everything I've seen, it just sounds like a big scenario of unfortunate timing, essentially.
Okay.
Alpine, I think, had Nick DeVries. I think they had expectations of him driving for them down the line. Whether that, I mean, Fernando Alonso was their second guy. Like, I don't know. Fernando Alonso's like 42 years old or something like that. I'm assuming Alpine looks at that and says, how many more years does this guy have? Let's get someone ready to go. Nick DeVries was the F2 champion in 2019. It's now 3 years later. He hasn't gotten to get a drive in F1 and everything. Sorry, I am mixing up DeVries and Piastri. Piastri, 2021.
Now signed for McLaren.
So he was the F2 champion in 2021. So I think he was itching to get a spot and a drive. He was a very recent F2 winner, so McLaren and other teams probably had interest in him. Mm-hmm. He probably said, oh, Alonso is driving well for the team. I expect them to keep him around as long as he's willing to drive. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to hang around and wait to see what happens with my future. I'm going to go out and find a team. And so I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think there wouldn't be as big of a issue or unhappiness from Alpine if Seb doesn't retire and Alonso jumps to Aston Martin so quickly that their heads were spinning and didn't know. And they're like, oh, well, we got this Piastri guy that we picked up and he's good. And at that point, I think he had already been like, well, I don't think I'm going to get a drive here, so I'm going to go and see where I can get one. Yeah. So with that, like, he chose not to go the route of DeVries, which I was mixing up briefly, where DeVries has kind of waited on as a reserve driver and waited for his opportunity to come and then made the most of it. Piastri was a little bit more of a go-getter, whether you look at that as positive or negative in the scenario.
Right. So. And I guess from Piastri's point of view, I'm not mad at it. Like, my man's got to look out for his own future. I guess I was arguing from the side of, because I know Alpine was a little butthurt about it. So it's like, well, like, you got it. Like, that's what I'm saying. In a world where there is no recourse against poaching, you've got to be the ones that are like keeping them locked down. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and from the side of and I followed along pretty closely because I was intrigued by it, because I was like, there's a lot of hostility coming from the side of Alpine regarding this.
Not happy.
It sounds like they didn't really have. They said they had him signed to a contract or something like that. Apparently, they had talked about a contract, but nothing was signed. So he was not technically someone who was signed to a contract with their team for the following year. I think they were in negotiations, but then doors opened and he walked through them. And like,
Sure.
I think on that side, it's like, you gotta do a little bit better with your negotiating if you're gonna keep a driver. Like,
That's what I'm saying.
yeah, I completely agree. And so I hope that Alpine does not scrub its program development program. I hope that as many teams as possible start doing that, and then we end up seeing talent kind of come up throughout F1 as opportunities arise, as opposed to, oh, someone's sick this week, let's bring in Nico Hulkenberg again to drive because we don't know who else to put in that seat. Like,
Right.
hey,
The talent pool is a little dry.
and no knock to Hulk, like he was a good driver for a while, but I think that there's a lot of young talent that hasn't gotten opportunities because we have so many long-standing drivers that it isolates specific teams to be almost like feeder teams to the rest of the league. Like, how is Williams ever going to like get back to where they were in terms of competing for championships and everything if year after year after year they're used as a team that you bring in a young driver and then that driver has a really good drive in a bad car and then a better team just signs them as soon as their contract's up.
Sure.
Like, without each team kind of developing their own drivers and all, you just end up with these teams that are at the bottom of the grid just giving up their talent year after year after year and finding a new guy who's potentially not going to be as good in the car while everyone else just hangs on to the guys who have been driving for a bit.
Right.
So,
well, let me stick this in your ear and clean it out. So there is an engine freeze until 2025, right? Cost cap has just been introduced, new regulations. So, what if we're going to start seeing more teams be able to allocate more research and more funds, basically, to these development programs where previously they were just having to scramble hand over foot for sponsorships to try and keep up with the ever-growing technical demands of a sport that was dominated by a works team, that everything was being made in-house, and you have some of these customer teams that are struggling with like chassis, engine, transmission marriage, and now it seems like teams would have the best opportunity they've had in a long time to start developing younger drivers if they're minded in that way. So you're right, we start seeing less of a technical scramble and more of a talent scramble, in the sense of, you know, bringing younger drivers up to fill these more veteran slash tenured spots that may look to go towards a younger talent. And is that the sport changing? And, you know, maybe it is, and that could be fine. But yeah, it would be interesting to want to tune into the F2 race, every other weekend or every couple of weekends, to just know who you're going to see in the next 2 years, where I don't think right now I have that sense.
I've been watching a bit.
Interested to get there.
Yeah, I've been watching a bit just because this has piqued curiosity. I've heard about some of these younger drivers and the potential for spots opening up. And so, and the nice thing with F2 is it's not every F1 weekend. They don't have as many races. So, like, you have less to follow alongside F1, but I agree. I think that the potential, I mean, we have Audi coming in as another engine supplier. So that's another supplier that can work closely with teams potentially to try and fit their engine to that constructor, as opposed to, like you were saying, with the different teams kind of having, these are your engine options, take it or leave it, like deal with it and figure out how to make your car mesh. Having additional engine suppliers, I think, is good for F1 in general and the potential growth and whatnot of the sport. And yeah, I think that does also allow for development of drivers. And I think that that's a good progression to have at this point in F1. I'm slightly surprised that it hasn't gotten to this point sooner in terms of as much development of young drivers.
It couldn't have.
Well, yeah, and so few teams have had these junior programs compared to the size of F1. Like, I think it's a good time to be able to do that. So, looking forward to kind of seeing what happens. Maybe Felipe Drugovich ends up getting a drive here or there if someone's out sick, or hopefully not, but has a bad crash or something that knocks them out of a race. I mean, stranger things have happened. Appendicitis, anything. I would love to see how he would do in an F1 car, kind of like we got to see with Nick DeVries this past week. Before we get fully to that, though, some other contract things and just F1. So Colton Herta, I don't want to move too slow or too fast, but so Colton Herta was, obviously, we talked about being looked at by AlphaTauri as the replacement for Pierre Gasly, and him most likely moving to Alpine. The FIA did not grant Colton Herta a super license. So I think that's an interesting topic. The fact that IndyCar is looked at similarly to a feeder series like F2. I think that the quality of drivers and the points towards super license should be more for IndyCar than they are for F2. I mean, F2 are very young drivers that are coming up and like still growing, and IndyCar is a very strong and storied driving series with a lot of extremely good talent. I don't think that those are on the same level or should be compared at the same level in terms of super license points, which they currently are. So I think Herta should have been able to get a super license. I think it's just odd that, from looking into it, that the FIA looks at IndyCar, even Formula E or other like series like that, they have them on the same level as F2 pretty much for like super license points.
So, are you saying that Colton Herta just couldn't get a drive for this year? Like, can he still accumulate those super license points?
He could, but I think he is someone who is easily qualified to drive in F1 in terms of his skill, talent, and like he's shown that he is a good driver. But because he is in a very competitive series, he just doesn't quite have enough super license points for the FIA to be like, yep, you're allowed to compete in F1.
Okay, so it would be them, like, let's say you need 40 points. If he's at 37, the argument is, like, they're not going to just give him those 3 points to...
Basically, yeah.
I'm kind of, like, with the FIA on that. Like, is there... Okay. Is 37 points the max amount that he could have possible in his career right now? Has he gobbled up every single super license point available to him? and then they're saying like, well, we understand the contract's coming right now, but you don't have enough points, so we're gonna hold it off? Or did he leave points on the table throughout his career where now all of a sudden they won good graces from the FIA and oh, just grandfather him in and oh, like he's got it? Well, maybe my argument would be if he couldn't earn those points, maybe he doesn't deserve that drive yet. Maybe he's still got to earn these points and then he is quote unquote good enough to drive. Like what's the obsession? Just because he was looked at by these teams that all of a sudden people are like, "Well, he got a look, let him in. Oh, he got looked at, just let him in."
No, not at all. I don't think that's it. I think it's he has been in IndyCar for, he's been driving in IndyCar since 2018, or I'll say 2019. He had one race in 2018.
Gotcha.
He has 6 IndyCar wins over the past few years. But
And that's what earns you the super license points?
no, it's how you finish in the actual championship for IndyCar.
Okay.
So first place in IndyCar gets 40 points, which qualifies you for a super license. But your points are from the past 3 seasons. That's all that counts into it.
Okay.
Second and third place. So first, second, and third place in Formula 2 get 40 points.
Okay.
They top 3 in Formula 2 automatically get a super license. First, second, and third in IndyCar, first place gets 40 points, second place gets 30 points, third place gets 20 points, fourth place 10, fifth place 8, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1 for 10th place. One super license point. IndyCar, in my opinion, and no knock to F2 and the drivers that are coming up, is a stronger and more reputable series than F2 is. And you get less super license points for finish. I mean, Herta finished 3rd in IndyCar in 2020, 5th in IndyCar in 2021, and 10th in 2022. So 3rd, 5th, 10th ends up being 29 points, even though he's been in the top 10 of the ridiculous number of IndyCar drivers for the past 3 seasons, including a 3rd place finish. He still doesn't qualify for F1.
3rd, 5th, 10th? He's falling off then. Why would they? Why would they give him a super license? Who cares?
I mean, I don't think that that's necessarily speaking to his quality of driving. He's had more pole positions this year than he had in 2020 when he finished 3rd.
Does he convert them into wins?
He converted 1 to a win. Last year, his 3 pole positions ended up in 3 wins.
That's pretty good.
So, I understand the rules for the super license, but I just... And I get that they've been laid out. I think it is strange that a driver that has done so well in... I don't think it's arguable that IndyCar is more competitive than F2. And in my opinion, I just think that
I'm not arguing that. I can't.
Because we've had F1 world champion Fernando Alonso go to IndyCar, not be an IndyCar champion, and then come back to F1. We've seen plenty of F1 drivers go to IndyCar, so you know that these guys who have been good enough to go into F1 are driving in IndyCar and getting beat by plenty of IndyCar drivers in plenty of circumstances. Yeah, they're getting wins. They're getting pole positions. Marcus Ericsson won the Indy 500. That's awesome. But if those guys are going over and racing in those series and then not like you are saying that the guys who are beating them are not good enough quality to go and race in F1, but these guys who are young coming up in F2, some 17, 18-year-old kid who, like, understandably, like, you have to be top 3 in F2 to automatically qualify, or
Right.
you can do the same thing past 3 seasons. You could spend 3 seasons in F2 building up your points to get a super license. But
What about proximity factors? Like, these teams are involved with the main constructors of Formula One. So there's like relationships being built, there's time invested, there's money being invested
there is.
into these, into F2 and F3. And like, okay, so he's been in from 2019, so that's 3 years, and his results are just getting worse. Like, from him specifically, yeah, I'm not sold at 29 points with those results that he should be the one that gets just granted 11 arbitrary
Well,
points.
and I'm not saying, like, give him arbitrary, like,
Then how would he earn them?
well, what I'm saying is the system of, like, the points that
Okay,
they're
so you
giving.
change the point granting system
Right.
to then say, oh, he actually would have earned this many.
And
then.
not just for him. I think in general it should be changed. I don't see how. I mean, like, first place in Formula E, for example, even only gets 30 points. You can win Formula E and not have a super license.
Right.
Like,
And you're just arguing from like a real should recognize a real perspective, is understand that these are like quality series.
right.
Just recognize
Yes.
recognize the points giving rules as such, because you believe they've leveled up since those rules may have been incepted.
I think that the rules are biased against a U.S. driving driving thing, and
Sure,
like,
wouldn't that just be the pond tax? Like, we're across the pond. What do they care about us?
I mean, I think if you're going to, and I do think that F1 is trying to constantly grow their fan base, grow their viewership, like any of these racing leagues and everything should be. Like, that's how you make money. You bring in more viewership. You bring in more eyeballs. Your marketing sells more. Like, you're benefiting F1, and hey, opening the door, like, that still doesn't mean that those Formula One teams have to contract those drivers. Hey, I think that's more the pond tax than anything, is being like, hey, I have no connection with your team. I have no connection with your racing league, but this is what I've done over here. Why not take a shot on me, as opposed to the guy who has been traveling around Europe for the past 3 years in these different other championships, F3, F2, and all. And the teams could be like, nah, like, we got a guy that we like, right, that's been coming up and everything. Like, you look good over there, but who's to say? Like, I think that should be more the pond tax than this, like, restriction on, oh, well, like, it's IndyCar. Like, is it really that good? Like, I don't know if you guys deserve to get a little bit more super license points for that. Like, that's how it seems to me, is more of a, like, standoffish, like, that's just IndyCar. That's not real racing. As opposed to, like, oh, like, hey, sorry, you just didn't cut it. It doesn't seem like it's he's not good enough thing. It seems like the system of how you can qualify for a super license is just a little out of whack. And I'm not saying, like, overtune it, but maybe the top 3 in IndyCar should get a super license, or get enough for points for a super license, instead of only the first place. when
Right.
top 3 and F2 all automatically get their super license.
Yeah.
Like that's I think where it kind of falls for me, because with that now it does obviously open the door for someone like Nick DeVries, who has now been in talks with Alpha Tauri to move in to that spot instead. And so, like, all credit to him, but I also wouldn't have been upset if Colton Herta came in and drove for Alpha Tauri and we got to see, hey, this guy who is consistently competitive in IndyCar in a bigger field than F1 and has finished top 10 the past 3 years. Like, who's to say he wouldn't have been more entertaining or bring some extra American viewership? But with that, Nick DeVries could hopefully solidify that drive with Yuki. So I mean, there's positives and negatives. I really enjoyed watching Nick DeVries this past race, so I'm not unhappy with that. I just think that the point system should be revamped a little bit.
And like you said, maybe not overtune, just just turn down a little bit to maybe make it a little more accessible and give who would be reasonable talents maybe more of a look where it would be easy to overlook so many of these drivers, because none of them other than the winner would ever have a super license, really, unless you were like back to backing or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can definitely understand that. Yeah, and I'm not for one way or the other. I don't have any allegiance to DeVries or Colton Herta or whatever. Just
No, you
interesting
didn't.
to
It was good devil's advocating. I think that would be the way you say that. No,
Yeah.
so I completely agree. Like, I don't know if there's a perfect solution. I just find it like, I'm not saying by any means, hey, every IndyCar driver deserves a super license. Like, nah, but they should at least get the same respect that F2 does, at the least, in my opinion.
Dude, honestly, I hit 100 on 422 one time. Give me a super license.
I've done it too. High five.
Yeah.
But talking about Nick DeVries, we can kind of get into Monza a little bit, go briefly through that. But the man gets called up. He gets 25 minutes of FP3 driving in, goes out into qualifying, puts it in 13th in qualifying, so makes it out of Q1, but then starts P8 on the grid. So I know I had told you, and I think sent you the tweet that I had sent out, but like right then after qualifying, basically I was like, oh my God, this guy's had no time driving an F1 car and he's already beating Nick Latifi. I was like, we've said it on the pod this season, but like, just get him out. I was sitting there, sent out my tweet. It got up to, I think the final total was just over 4,600 likes, which was insane.
Dude,
I
crazy,
am
man.
mind blown, because I just made a stupid Drake meme, which I hate Drake, and I was like, this seems like
It's a
the
good
best
meme,
fit.
though.
It was a good meme, but I was like, holy moly, everyone's on the Nick DeVries hype train, and he had a solid race.
Yeah, I think he performed really well in the after, in the post race conversation. He picks up the mic and he's just like, "Man, my shoulders are dead, dead. My shoulders are so dead." Just the whole race. He
What was
was clearly in a battle, but yeah, handled himself really well and just like kind of raced his heart out. And if you did not know who that guy was, like at the start of the race, if you were like, "What's going on? Like who?" Like you definitely knew who he was at the end of the day, and
Oh
that's
yeah.
like pretty fucking cool. Um, And in a world where the broadcast does the best it can to sprinkle in these young drivers, that was an explosive kind of arrival on the scene for a young driver there in the Williams.
Yeah, he put a phenomenal performance out and like I think drove the car to similar level honestly as we've seen Alex Albon do. I was really impressed. And it was funny with him being like, my shoulders are dead. He like his arms are so tired, and obviously when I'm assuming most of his driving has been simulator driving, you don't experience the G forces or the like muscle stress that you feel in a real car, of course. And so, like, him coming over the radio with that, and then he was like asking his team if they were even allowed to help him out of the car because there were he was concerned about Parc Ferme and like the fact that drivers, it's like part of their qualifications to be able to exit the car on their own power in case of some sort of crash or accident where they have to get out suddenly. He's like, are you guys even allowed to help me out? He's like, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this car. I just drove 70 laps of like doing something that I have never done to this level before. And that was, it was just the whole situation. It was kind of like one of those once in a lifetime things. I feel like he had this random opportunity because of appendicitis for Alex Albon and just really made the most of it. Finishes P9, a huge performance for him. He's 20th now, I guess, in the driver's standings above Nick Latifi, who's been racing all season.
That's a hilarious stat, by the way.
Yeah, Latifi, if Hulkenberg had beat him out somehow or gotten a point in his one race, Latifi would be 22nd in a 20-car series. Now he's just 21st in a 20-car series. So
That's just kind of ridiculous. And yeah, I mean, he just, Nick DeVries pretty much stole the show, especially on a weekend where, Max takes another victory. We see Ferrari 2-5, so not the best result for Carlos Sainz, obviously. George
working
Russell,
his way up
P4.
through the field and all,
Sure.
started P18. And so that was one of the other things, like, and yeah, so Leclerc goes from pole, doesn't convert again. The Ferrari just didn't have it seemed like more the ability to keep the tires fresh. He was going through. I mean, I think he pitted before, if I'm remembering correctly. I think he pitted before Max the first time, and he started on the mediums where Max started on the soft tires. So I'm just gonna double check myself. Yeah, Leclerc was pitted lap 12 off the medium tires. Max made it to lap 25 on the softs. So lots of tire deg from the Ferrari. Max was able to capitalize on that, turn it into another win from a Charles Leclerc pole. But I just overall wanted to talk about, I think, what are your thoughts on these engine penalties? That was another big point of discussion. A lot of teams are saying, oh, we're adding more races to the season. We should not just be stuck with 3 engines. We should have 4, which I don't think is unreasonable. The other side, another point, not the other side, but another point is having all these engine penalties kind of nullifies the qualies. You're having, I mean, we had, I think, something like another 7 drivers that were taking penalties for engine components and things like that. not starting in their position. We had a scenario where drivers and the F1 social media and everyone else, we didn't even get a starting grid until hours and hours after qualifying had finished. Like, we have a reporter asked Max in the post-qualifying interviews and whatnot. They're like, oh, like, do you know where you're starting tomorrow? He's like, if I'm reading the rules right, should be P7 kind of thing, which he was correct, but like drivers, the media, no one even knew what the starting grid was going to be because of these engine penalties. It was just kind of a bizarre situation. I feel like it's one of those things where if you're, I don't know how you would even do it, but I think there has to be a way that drivers who are taking penalties maybe just like go to the back of the grid, or there's got to be something, because it was confusing with how many different penalties. You've got people taking 5-place grid penalties, you have people taking back of the grid penalties, you have people taking this and that. Like, we talked about it the last time this happened, right after the summer break, where Valtteri Bottas had 25 places of grid penalties and wasn't at the bottom because there were people who had back of the grid penalties that overpassed a 25-place grid penalty in a 20-car series. Like, I think a lot of people are like, those races are just kind of like throwaways almost to some extent, for not throwaways, but like you're not seeing the best drivers competing with each other at the top. You're watching them kind of work their way through the field and everything, which requires its own type of talent and skill. I'm not knocking that at all, but a lot of people seem to be unhappy with the fact that qualifying in pole position doesn't necessarily mean you're starting in pole on Sunday. If you're taking new engine components or things like it, it throws things very out of whack.
Yeah. Hey, but I think that's really just like really fucking missing the point. It seems like having one more engine and one more part at every category for a 22-23 race season, and it will likely hit 24-25 in the next couple of years.
24 next year.
Well, there we go.
Yep.
So it is a longer season, and it seems like the FIA would be kind of blind to how quickly these teams take new engines. If a car hits the wall in an important enough way, that's just an engine gone. That's just a massive tab. Obviously, we talked about the Red Bull $1 million tab from Silverstone, whatever, that they mentioned. So, like, it's a very real concern for the FIA and for the teams. So, I do believe that having one more part helps to alleviate some of that. However, from the viewer standpoint, where it's like, this is confusing and I don't get it. Well, what you're kind of missing is it's a championship. It's 23 odd races, and I think what you should be keying into is how well does a team deal with a built-in
Hit record again. You were frozen for about 30 seconds there.
Oh, that's unfortunate. The internet probably cut out a little bit.
So, but yeah, no, you were talking about from the viewership standpoint, like it should be recognized more so that it is like a full series and that it is how the teams like work through that and utilization of parts, keeping cars safe, things like that. And so I definitely
and then just one more note, like from a driver skill thing, like if you see Checo take a back of the grid penalty with arguably the same car and Max has the same thing, one of these drivers is able to climb up the grid, one of these drivers is not. Like that is useful information when trying to decide how you are rating these teams and these drivers. So I'm not sold on the like make every single race the most exciting thing. I want everybody in their qualifying positions. Like, dude, the technical side is part of the thing, and you can't separate them.
That's a good point. I think it's showing up more so this year than we've seen in past years because of engine regulation changes and whatnot, which have caused reliability issues along with a longer season. I think that's probably been like I agree with you in terms of, hey, like give them extra one engine, like you get 4 instead of 3, you get 4 ICUs, like or ICEs, and everything. I think that's kind of the solution I would lean towards, and hopefully they'll change that, especially with an additional race next year. We'll have 24. Monaco is going to be back for another season or for the next couple years, I think till 2025. That was announced. Las Vegas is going to be a Saturday race, which is only going to be the 4th Saturday race in F1's history, which will be interesting. But I agree. I think in general, it's more about allocating more for the teams when you have more races and everything, because I think it's not, I agree it's about how the teams like manage around that, but if it comes to a point where teams are just like, well, I'm just going to have, instead of 3 engines, I'm going to just use 7 this year because I can make it work inside our budget and like,
and just overtake everybody and not care.
Yeah, then that like takes away from how important qualifying is. I think it's just the conversation probably came up more this year because we've had 2 of those kinds of races since the break, and so we most likely will have at least one more of those kinds of races where a lot of people are taking engine penalties before the end of the season. Right. But I think that your solution sounds like it's probably the most reasonable. So I guess we'll have to see how that changes. Another change I would like to see. I'm just like going in on all the things that's wrong with F1 right now. And
we're tinkering, dude. We're give us the rule book.
But the thing that I was looking at, there was again from this past race, a lot of conversation came up about the finishing under a safety car and everything. I think it's, again, it's the way F1 is. It's part of the way it works. I also understand people wanting to see racing. And so there was a lot of talk of, hey, and I think that it's just, it's one of those things where until you run into a certain situation, you don't know how well your rules are going to actually like work in that scenario. Or there are situations that kind of break the rules of what you have set up. My like dumb example, me and my buddies, when we went to Spain a few years ago, we played this game called a card game called Asshole. We were going through playing. We were sitting waiting for our train to take us back to the city we were staying in, and we're just like, we're gonna grab some beers in this train station and just play cards. So we're playing this game over and over. I ended up winning a way that we like didn't see as problematic until the exact situation came up where I was like able to win not really the way that the game's intended.
Gotcha.
And so
the speed run.
And like sorta, yeah. It was like I ended up with the right number of cards, was able to play them in succession, kind of like an Uno type, like you're slapping cards down kind of game. And the cards I had were not supposed to work the way they did, but like I didn't break any rules doing it. So we had to make a new rule that was like, yeah, you can't do that. So like I think now that we've had this situation where there's a lot of gripes about everything finishing under a safety car. We, of course, had Abu Dhabi last season and how that ended. There's a lot of people that like the idea of when a race is in the last 10% of the race or whatever, in terms of laps, just red flagging it and sending things back out racing. Like where the cars ended up being parked for that safety. Like I think it was Danny Ricks, but the car was like impossible to easily get off that circuit.
Yeah, pretty tough. And I imagine there's with the red flag option, there's that 2-hour time limit that they have to think of, and just like a normal race without any hiccups, it's going to run this long. Like they can just do the math and say like, okay, fastest lap over the course of the race times 71 or whatever.
Well, and that's
going
like
to be this long.
And that's so like they can only but the thing is you can like only the limits are on total time from the start. There's a limit on total time from the start of the race to the end of it. But that is like decently long. And then there's like a max amount of like red flagged time. And that is like 2 hours. But if all the cars get off the grid, then it's like super easy to get that car out of the way, clean it up real fast, as opposed to like marshals like ducking and dodging to sweep shit out of the way of cars that are like coming around behind a safety car.
Right. And then you have to ask the question like, is the stoppage of play worth that ending the thing under racing? And most people would say yeah. They're like, I'd rather wait through a red flag than do this like elongated safety car where whoever was in the lead on, you know, lap 87%, let's say, is just the winner because Latifi fucking puts it into the wall.
Yeah,
right?
and
like, that is really unsatisfying, and it seems like the red flag is like decent.
And it also avoids situations like this again, where I was seeing all these like memes come up about Lewis because over the radios he stays out while other drivers pit, and they're like, Max behind on soft tires. Lewis had stayed out. Like, not the same situation. Lewis didn't expect
fucking hits him in the
didn't
head.
expect to win the race, but if you allow all of those drivers to come in on a red flag, put fresh tires on, and you're just like, hey, you got 7 laps, like, good luck. That's I saw a lot of memes where it's Lewis's face with like the war images like transposed over it. And I was like,
Max behind on softs.
I just think that it's one of those things that's like there is a solution that's like pretty easily recognizable that doesn't take that much away. Hey, you still get 7 laps of good racing. I even if you want to be like, oh, we'll do a rolling start, do like one lap under a safety car, come out like one lap under a safety car, and that way you allow whoever was leading to still, especially like in Max's case, he was 20 seconds up on second place at that point in the race. Like,
Right.
hey, if you wanna make it fair, like set it up so you have the safety car come around, you do a rolling start off one lap and let the leader go ahead and start things off and try and get the jump on people. Like, hey, I don't know. I think that is having a red flag in that scenario and coming up with a new starting option is a better option than seeing a race end under safety car that was, in general, I think, a pretty interesting race. We had a lot of different good storylines, and then it just got nullified right there at the end, which is just a bummer at the end of a good race. So I think that negative of it, just like, even though, yes, they followed the rules, that's the way it's supposed to go, it's not as interesting or really as good for the drivers. It doesn't allow opportunities that, hey, like, guys' tires could have been falling off at the end of the race and people could have had the opportunity to get overtakes, get into the points and whatnot. And, like, now all of a sudden they just don't because it ends under a safety car. Like, there's plenty of potential excitement outside of just who's first, second, third that comes into play if you're going to just end it under a safety car.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a good point. Like, maybe coming up with a new starting option. Yeah, that's an interesting idea.
So I don't know. I just, there was a lot of different interesting F1 like things to kind of go through. So I
for sure
appreciate you bearing with me through my long-winded portions. But
well, no, it's interesting to talk more about like the rules and the infrastructure and kind of the parties at play as opposed to just just the racing details and what was fun and exciting. And even with like the Twitch streaming, like we are to a certain degree part of that world, so it's like I think it's good to have discourse on it.
Yeah, I was trying to have a gambling tall and short of it stream.
Hey, I'm here for it. I'll spend all my clams. But yeah, no, I think it's fun to get into.
Yeah, it's definitely got a lot of good stuff to dig into. But we do have some League of Legends to get into as well. We've got all the teams set for Worlds. We've got all the playing groups. The only one that unfortunately may not or may throw a wrench into this is the Saigon Buffalo. Apparently have been having trouble getting visas for a bunch of their players. So they are supposed to be playing in the play-in stage in Pool 2 with Mad Lions, Evil Geniuses, and DFM from Japan. But unless they can get their visa situation figured out in the next 4 days or so, then they may not be able to make it, which I think it's crazy that at this point in time, with how far League of Legends and the World Championships have come, that this visa issue is still a problem.
Well, it may not be any of the companies involved. It may be the governments.
Well, I think that if you're having this many year after year teams having issues getting visas and things like that, outside of, oh, hey, we're in the LCS and we just signed a player from Korea yesterday and LCS starts next week, like, that's a different scenario for visas. I'm surprised that like Riot in the different regions isn't having more of these players like applying for visas sooner. Like, I know you don't know which team is qualified early enough, but isn't there a way that they can maybe like apply for visas sooner for the different play? I don't
Come
know.
on,
It's
they
like
print a hat for both teams at the Super Bowl, right? You got to be able to throw the championship hat for, right?
yeah, like it's
Exactly.
got to be possible to be like, oh, like these are the teams that could make it to Worlds, have them all at least complete the forms and whatever other stuff you have to do. And
Yeah.
hey, when you get down to like Final Four, just send all of it in and get the visas back, and whoever needs them gets it. But
Or at least have like a plan for a sub. Maybe do like a small, a small drawing for teams that get the call if
great option.
something
Like
happens.
yeah, like the regions that are only bringing 3 teams instead of 4 that are
Right.
going to more easily hopefully be able to make it, like have a backup team from those regions or something like that. But that's a bummer. But getting to the World's Playing stage, we do have that coming up before too long. It starts on the 29th, so we'll have some League of Legends, not for this coming episode, but 2 weeks from now, we'll have some playing games. Um, it is interesting though because there's a lot of really strong teams that are in this in the playing stage, and only 4 of them will make it out. And we have 5 major region teams that are in there, so at least one major region team will not make it, and potentially more, of course, with the developing regions that are playing, because we have RNG, DRX, Fnatic, Mad Lions, and EG being those 5 major region teams that are in the play-in stage.
Yeah, and then obviously a handful of the developing regions. I took a gander at some of the finals from these regions, looking at the PCS final, looking at the Vietnam final, and the Brazil final, just to get a sense of like who we be looking at, what their kind of what their competition level is, and that's likely a conversation that's probably better suited for next week, honestly, when we'll be like right there ahead of the play-in stage. Because obviously, like they're not like anything crazy. The team that came out top seed in each of those regions, it was a best of 5, sealed it up in 3 games. All 3 of them were 3-0s.
Oh wow.
So I think that does speak to a big discrepancy between seed 1 and 2. There's some pick and ban stuff that we can get into, but honestly, I'd rather save that conversation for like when we're right in front of play-in stages, when we're gonna see these pick bans from some of these teams. I'd rather kind of save that conversation.
Yeah, I
But yeah,
definitely am good with that. I was most for myself. I was mostly looking at the playing groups and the players that have been to Worlds before, because we
yeah,
do have a number of teams that are very fresh in terms of their players on an international stage beyond gaming from the PCS. I don't believe any of their players have played at the World Championships before. Even for DRX, you have 2 of their players, or well, 2 of their starters that haven't been to Worlds or an international competition, with Kingen and Zika.
right.
But then you have a team like Detonation Focus Me that has an extremely similar lineup to what
Mm-hmm.
we've seen with Evie, Yarong, and Udapan coming in. So
Mm-hmm.
it's
Steel was their jungler as well. We're familiar
I
with him.
couldn't remember if he was or not, but I
Mm-hmm.
had a feeling. But just in general, I think it's pretty cool to see all of the returning players and new players that are going to be coming in at Worlds.
Same thing from Istanbul Wildcats,
Mm.
Starscreen, Ferret, Saren, Holy Phoenix, Farfetch, all players that we've seen before, all have been on the world stage. So I'm gonna be very excited to, I mean, I'm not there, but welcome them back and see them play. And the other player that I wanted to talk
I have
about
a
from
feeling.
Brazil
Yeah.
is Tinones.
Yep, I had
My
a feeling.
I did not know that he was still playing, and you have no idea how just like nostalgia happy I got seeing him in the final. I was like, no way, my man's still playing. Dude, immediately I was rooting for Loud because Pain Gaming, I didn't recognize any of the players. So I was like, let's go. And
Yeah.
then on top of that, Loud won the Valorant Champions 2022. And so they're just in my head. I'm like, oh, that's the org. I'm rooting for them. They're my play-in stage underdogs.
Yeah, the only person that I know from Pain Gaming with is BRTT. So that was the only guy that I really remembered, and of course Tinones had also played for Pain Gaming previously as well.
Yes.
So I saw that for Loud and was like, oh, that's awesome. And similarly, I was like, oh, I know them from. I knew of the organization more so from Valorant than I did
Yep.
from League of Legends.
Yep.
So it was a cool crossover. But yeah, I think we can definitely get into the playing stage and how that's setting up a bit more next week. But I know you wanted to talk some Valorant. I was able to watch the FPX and XSET series as well as the FPX versus DRX series. I
Nice.
didn't get through the later on matchups, which I do plan to with DRX, Optic, and Loud in those semifinals and finals. But I love watching Valorant. It is so insane though. I
Mm-hmm.
cannot. I just I would not have the ability to like. I know even with my FPS experience in different games, I would not climb in Valorant like I used to in League. Like the amount of tactical decisions and positioning and things like that, like there's only so much you can do to outplay things like you can in League of Legends to an extent where in that I'm just like these guys are insane.
Yeah, and just seeing like on especially like the carry players, like the ones that are on the jet and the chamber, watching their flicks and just their raw talent in the gun battles is just insane. Like obviously it's fun watching the operator players, hit the one taps with the sniper rifle. And because I know you watch the FPX and the XSET series, I did want to highlight FPX's strength with that chamber pick, with their player Artis,
He's
where
so good.
dude, dude,
I was so amped by him. He had I'll let you continue. I'm sorry.
dude, he had this 4K on Pearl where it was a quick look to middle of the site, flicks down elbow, and then he was back mid. Like the quickness of this guy was so insane. And just not even from a talent perspective, just from the like meta game of the tournament, Chamber was a massive pick for a lot of these teams. FPX and Optic being like the heaviest proponents of it, they put a lot of prio on that pick, so that was really interesting. You see the introduction of Pearl into the competitive meta, which has a really long B long with like a pretty free entrance onto the main site. But the whole A sector of the map, it's like a bunch of these little tight corridors and 90 degrees and little tunnels. So it was fun to see, especially in the early stages of the tournament, how these teams came in, if they had prepared Pearl as part of their map pool to say like, we're going to be ahead of the game, or if they just banned it out and said like, hey, we don't even want to deal with it, let's play on El Clasico here. So just like a bunch of really fun stuff from the metagame. And the final four, FPX, DRX, Optic Gaming, and Loud. We had FPX from EMEA, which is basically Europe, DRX coming out of Korea, Optic Gaming, North American representative, Loud from Brazil. Dude, the Final Four in the semis was so exciting. So Loud knocks. Do you want me to stay spoiler free here for you?
Oh, no, I've got the whole
Okay.
bracket up here, so we're
So
good.
Loud knocks down Optic Gaming in a 2-0 victory down into the losers bracket. This is right before Xset, or this is after FPX knocks out Xset, guaranteeing that 4 spot, putting them in the matchup against DRX. DRX just comes out guns blazing in that matchup. I think DRX versus FPX was one of the most exciting matchups of the whole tournament. It was crazy.
And
Buzz,
it was
Mako,
so competitive too. Like it was
that's what I'm saying.
the Loud and Optic matchup, 13-10 and then 13-3 on Ascent for
It was
Loud.
brutal.
That is not a very close series, but in terms of the FPX and like I watched FPX Xset first and I was like, man, this was tight. This is back and forth, like multiple of these maps going to extra frames or going to overtime. And with the FPX and DRX matchup, that easily could have done the same thing. That was so tight the entire time, even with DRX getting the 2-0.
Yeah, it really could have went either way. I think FPX like really played their heart out. DRX ends up taking it to face Optic Gaming then in the losers bracket final for who would then go up against Loud ultimately. Optic Gaming takes it where the man El Diablo himself, Yay on the chamber comes through, and if Optic Gaming was going to have a chance, it was through that man. Optic Gaming goes all the way to 5 games against DRX, pulls it out in the last map. It was crazy. They earned themselves the rematch against Loud, and obviously Loud comes out, takes it in a 3-1. And in those gun battles in that final, truly Loud was just better on the day than Optic. But just that whole like final stint of the tournament was so exciting. Honestly, the talent level comparatively between the teams was right there. I think each of the matchups was super exciting. And again, it was a tournament that just delivered from the teams, the players, the casting, the production value. I love the stage. All of it was just super, super exciting. And I'm very much looking forward to the VCT Valorant Champions Tour next year in 2023. It was fucking sick.
Yeah, I think hopefully I'll have time to follow it a little bit more than this year, but I mean it's always so fun to watch, and just looking at the finals matchup between Loud and Optic, like that was extremely close. Even in 3-1, you have map 1 going to overtime 15-13 for Loud. You have map 3 going to overtime 16-14. Like those are that is a tight series.
Oh yeah. And that's what you want to see. You just want to see high level competition.
And that shows the talent that there is in this game and everything. And so, especially with, I know that they recently announced for next year, I believe, the Valorant Champions Tour teams. So they are, I guess, franchising similarly to what they did in League of Legends.
Oh, that's very cool.
And so there's going to be a VCT Americas, VCT with so VCT Americas with 10 teams, VCT EMEA for European teams, and then a VCT Pacific. So
Nice.
the teams have been decided for all of those. Notably, Optic left out actually of the franchise teams. So, I guess with the applications and everything, they were one of the teams that did not make the cut for the 30.
That's crazy. And especially like at the tournament, they were calling Ye like the best performing player in the world right now. They were calling Ye the best player in the world. So it's crazy that they don't have that player in the North American series. That's kind of crazy. That'd be like having dude, that'd be like having OGN or LCK without Faker.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure he'll get picked up by another team, but like
Sure.
Exet also not in it. Leviathan not in it. So there's a couple of like three of these teams that made it to the playoffs in VCT this year that are not going to be even a part of VCT for next year. So
Interesting. Yeah, so we'll see what happens to like the notable players, and it's really early in the lifespan of the game to
it
have like
is,
these
yeah.
like team allegiances and whatever. Obviously things are still shaking out. I just hope that the players that deserve a home, land somewhere that want them.
And I'm sure they
Um
will. I
sure.
think with 10 teams amongst these like different regions and all that they've created now, I expect that there will be spaces for those top players to find a spot.
Sure. But yeah, just overall, really fun tournament. Obviously, we've just had so many things wrapping up here. Looking into, we're in September. We're getting towards the end of the year. All these series are wrapping up. But yeah, just looking ahead to Worlds coming up. Broadcast starts the 29th. So next week we'll have that. We got Singapore coming up on the next weekend as
Third,
well.
well, 1st of October, I guess it would be.
Yep.
So
So that'll be, next Sunday. So lots of things coming up, lots of things to look forward to, lots of fun things behind us as well. So yeah, just all around good stuff. I think, I think it's been fun.
definitely. So it's that championship season. So
Yeah, there you
we're
go.
we're getting into the heat of a lot of that. Um, Talking about other competitive games, Magic the Gathering.
Oh, I just wanna give you one little note. I was able to take a victory last night out of 3 games, which is pretty fun.
Nice.
Like no shenanigans, no nothing, just a good clean victory. Got my pieces on the board, drew a bunch of cards, killed my opponents. So that was game 2, went really well. But game 3, and sir, I have never done this before, but I have never felt so stuffed in my life in Commander. Like it was just one, two, three cards played out by Brett in a 3-turn succession. I was just like, I'm done. I'm out. Like that just hoses me. Just the deck that I was playing, it was like enter the battlefield matters. Like I wanted a bunch of enter the battlefield triggers, get value off of them, and his 3 spells right in a row were pay extra for those, enter the battlefields. That was his second turn. His third turn was a rule of law that says you can only cast 1 spell per turn, and then his fourth turn was a spell that said any spells you cast past the first one are going to cost 1 more mana, so no like storming off kind of thing. And then if you tap a land for more than 1 mana, it's gonna only create 1 mana. So you can't you couldn't make exponential resources. And
Yeah.
right there, I was just like, all right, dude, GG, I'm out. Like I can't do anything. And it is not in my wheelhouse usually to like scoop like that off turn to just 1 card and just be like, all right, fuck this. It wasn't even like I wasn't even mad. I just felt beat right there and was like, that's it, GG.
Yeah, I mean I also don't think that is like in your neighbor to or in your nature to typically just like prescribe yourself to just being like, yeah, like I don't have a shot at winning this, so I'm done. Like that sounds like you just literally were not going to be able to do anything and it was going to
Locked
come
out.
to you and you're going to be like, well, I need 3 mana for this and I have 2 mana on here, but I could tap this for 2 mana, but like and you're just like, well, I can do one thing this turn and it's not gonna help me. Like,
Yeah, so it would just be like draw, pass, so whatever. And
yeah.
I'm not gonna make a habit out of it. I wasn't salty or anything,
But
but yeah,
also
I just was.
if you have a deck that doesn't have like manaless instant sorceries or like anything else that you can play that are going to even affect the game,
Right.
like there are some decks that you're going to have that are creature oriented or storm oriented and things like that, especially with the decks you like to play, as
Mhm.
opposed to like being like, well, at least I can counterspell people and fuck with them for a bit.
Yeah,
Like,
like I couldn't even do that. I
yeah,
couldn't even
like
do that.
based on what you're saying, I assumed so. So it doesn't sound like it's a scenario that's going to happen often, but like,
No, no, it was pretty one of one and just fucking hilarious. And it was just funny where he was like, "All right, guys, I have like a hard out at 9:30." So we had like 45 minutes or like an hour to play, and he plays these like you can't play the game cards. It's like, "What are you talking about hard out, dude?" So, whatever. It
brutal.
was
That's funny
was
though.
stacks, stacks, stacks. So that was just like a funny couple of games. But that's just, whatever. Neither here nor there. I will not be scooping at instant speed anytime soon. That would just seem like a good opportunity to get it out of my system here. But I think we've been talking for a while. Let's talk a little bit more about our flavor of the week here, Aaron. Why don't you give me yours?
Sounds good. I will run through it kind of quicker since we are getting long here. But the my food for the week, the other day, I forget what day it was, but I was driving home. Colleen and I hadn't like planned anything for dinner, and I was like, called her on my way home. I'm like, I'm driving by the grocery store, like anything you want. She's like, I have no clue, no preference, surprise me. And I didn't have anything I was craving, so I like went in, and I was like, when we didn't live together, a lot of times when I would go down to her place, she would come over. We would plan out these like nicer dinners and whatnot to have, and like have more like nice home dinners here and there than like
Sure.
living together where you're planning more for like convenience. You're buying a lot of the same things so that you can like like a lot of chicken that you can use in different recipes, whatever. um,
Yes.
so I go and I was like, I'm gonna just like, we haven't had a nice like dinner at home, like fancier dinner at home. We have plenty of good dinners. So I got some New York strip steaks,
Oh yeah.
scallops, and then we had potatoes and salad. Cooked them all up, seared those scallops and everything. So I had a little bit of a fancy home dinner for the one night the other
Hell
week,
yeah.
which was nice. For my visual medium, it's not a movie or show or anything. It's just Colleen and I went for a really long bike ride this past Saturday. We went 16 miles, 8 miles out, 8 miles back, and we went on the trail by us, which continues all the way down past where we grew up and everything, and past our high school.
Hmm.
Weird being on a different part of that trail, but it was like cool seeing all this new scenery because I hadn't run on that portion of the trail. I hadn't like gone anywhere really in that section, and so it was all new scenery and like cool stuff. So my visual medium was just like seeing all the new sights and everything on our bike ride, because
Oh
you
yeah.
you can see so much more when you're biking than when you're running. We covered a lot of ground, so that was pretty cool. And then my music for this week also comes from the bike ride. I had my phone set up and everything on my handlebars and a little phone holder thing, and I was jamming out to, I think I mentioned him a couple weeks ago, but Petey, he has a full album that it's very like, I don't even know how to describe the music, but I was just enjoying listening to more songs from that album than I
Nice.
had previously. So that wraps up my flavor of the week.
Very cool. That's pretty neat getting out into nature, getting out a little bit of outside on you. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, not too bad.
Nice.
So how about yourself? What have you been munching on, listening to, watching over the past
Well,
couple weeks now?
I appreciate you asking. Me and Sarah had been a little bit in the spooky way. So the one evening we put on the Shia LaBeouf classic Disturbia,
Okay.
and that one totally love it. Is kind of a slow burner, but the culmination is like really exciting, and it's quite a thrilling movie. Shia LaBeouf classic film. So Disturbia for those October spooky vibes.
Nice.
My food for the week, Sarah gave a try to some spaghetti squash, where you
Hmm.
use that as like your like quote unquote pasta base for whatever else you wanted to have going on. She mixed it up with like a
Solid.
bunch of peppers and some other things, but for the meat, for the protein, she mixed in some shrimp. Moving forward, she said that we probably add a little more shrimp, but overall, it was a banging dish. It was really good. Um,
Well, and that's like the great thing about spaghetti squash and those is they take on like the flavors of everything else that you're cooking with them. So it's
right.
like it has the right texture and everything, and
Yep.
so it really doesn't like you don't lose much using that.
Yeah, and it was just super interesting. It wasn't, it's not like my first go to, but I definitely think it's going to be a meal that we do again. She did these like zucchini breadcrumb like oven toasty things that had like a garlicky. Oh my god, they were to
Sounds
die
good.
for. Yeah, they were so fucking good. So that was my food here for the week. Sarah hooking it up with something different, trying a couple new recipes, which is always fun. And then I'm really excited to talk about this, honestly. I haven't gone back to it in a long time, but my music here for the week, Run the Jewels 3 with Killer Mike and LP. I've listened to it front to back like 3 or 4 times now in the last couple of weeks. And dude, I am just jamming. Honestly, so like LP's verses are some of just the tightest I've ever heard. Honestly, they're super fucking good. And some of the lines are resonating with me differently than what I'd heard the album before. So I'm just like, I'm just eating it up. I'm putting it on every opportunity that I have. Run the Jewels 3 has just been amazing. So that's my flavor of the week here.
Nice. Would you say that you ran the jewels back?
I definitely ran the Jewels back to back to back to back a couple of times.
Nice, that's awesome. It's always nice when you go back to like old stuff. I've been thinking about doing that a bit more lately. I've been getting kind of bland with the stuff that Spotify's been popping up again and again. I'm like, I
Sure.
feel like I've listened to the same songs a lot, so maybe it's time to do a little bit of that. But with that flavor of the week, that does bring us, of course, to the end of this week's episode. We appreciate everyone bearing with us during our off week that we didn't really plan. So we appreciate that as we kind of get back into the swing of things. As always, thanks for listening. We appreciate everyone taking the time to join us for this week after week.
Yeah, new episodes every Thursday. You can find us on Twitter at Tall and Short of One. We'll do our best to kind of keep any announcements, any updates there. I may take to posting them in the Discord as well, so you can find us in the Discord. New episodes, like I said, every Thursday on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. And just want to second Aaron's sentiment. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. We truly appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. Peace out, everyone.
Later.